Hi, this is Dustin Hoekstra with the AWR Group of National Instruments. Today I'll be showing some of the improvements we've made to AWR V14 in the field of module layout, and more specifically iNets or intelligent nets. The first feature I'd like to show is a way to reshape an existing iNet after it's been drawn to completion. In previous versions, you could right-click on it and you would see a command called reshape route. We've now changed that such that instead of modifying a net from either end, you can do it anywhere on the net. So if I right-click on an iNet, choose reshape route, now I can click anywhere on that net and draw a new addition to the net. For example, in this case, I wanted to avoid being so close to that via, so now I just do that, and now I have my newly shaped route complete in just a few clicks. Here in this drawing, you can see I have an iNet module spiral drawn using iNets. If we look at the 3D view, you can see what it looks like in more detail. A common design technique is to get rid of these sharp corners, these 90-degree corners, to reduce current crowding. So we've added a few new bend types to the iNet feature. So here I can go to Shape Properties, and underneath the iNet tab, underneath the Route tab, I can change the bend style from square, and for example, we can try chamfered, which is a new one. And I'm going to set this amount is basically a radius for the chamfer at 2 times the width. And so now you can see what the new bends look like. Another new bend style that we added, and once again I'll go to the Shape Properties and the Route tab. I will change from chamfered to rounded. Before we had curved, rounded is a little bit different, and it's a little difficult to see here in the 2D view. I'll do a zoom in on one of the bends just so you can see. The inside of the bend is still a square, but the outside is rounded. And now we can see it in 3D view, and we have some nice rounded curved corners for all the bends. So here in my microwave office schematic layout, I have 2 lumped element capacitors, and I'd like to draw an iNet connecting those two. As those of you familiar with iNets know, you double click on the route line to start the iNet routing, and then you click and drag to get the route going. And if I want to change my layer using Control-Shift mouse wheel, I can do that. And as per usual, the vias will draw as I'm routing. Now, if I wanted to change my via type on the fly, previous versions you couldn't do that, or you'd have to edit the route afterwards. Now we can change it on the fly using the hotkey Shift V. And if you look at my last via drawn, you can see as I'm hitting Shift V, it's changing the via type. So it went from this small via, let's say we wanted to go to this very large via. And not only does it change that one, this action will also change the default. So if I go back to layer 3, you'll see my new default is now the larger one. And if I wanted to hit Shift V again, it will change the previous one. Now I'm back to the small one, and if I go back up to layer 1, or layer 4 in this case, it will go back to that smaller via type. So quickly and easily we can change the nature of our route by changing the vias on the fly using the new Shift V hotkey instead of changing them after the fact. On my screen here you can see I have a very simple net drawn between 2 lumped element devices, going through a few different layers where I have a few different vias and their via pads. What I'd like to show is this feature of being able to change the location of the vias. So let's say we wanted to save some room and move this via such that the pad lines up a little better with the actual iNet segments. What I can do is I can double click on an iNet to bring up some drag handles, take that middle one, and now drag it in any direction I want. So let's say I wanted to drag it about here, so as I mentioned, it lines up with the edges of the traces. I can do this with any of the iNets. If I wanted to do it for this bottom one too, all I do is simply double click on it and drag it in any direction. Alternatively, I can shift right click on a iNet via and go to Route Via Properties, and I could type in any specific offset values. Say if I wanted it to be offset by 63 in both directions, I could do that as well. And that concludes this feature for the offsetting of iNets in version 14 of AWR. On my screen here, I have a typical layout, module layout using iNets. In the center of everything here, I have a 6-pin footprint, for example, for a surface mount device. Let's say I realize after I've done my nice layout that I need to relocate that device. So I'll grab my 6-pin layout, drag it over about 400 units, and say this is my new location. In previous versions of AWR, what you'd have to do is go one by one and redraw every one of these nets to make sure all your connections are complete again. What we've added now is a feature where you can select that 6-pin layout, or any cell layout for that matter, right-click and say Snap Cell Connections. And as you can see, it's modified all my traces on the fly automatically to reconnect it, so my layout is once again clean, DRC clean, everything has, all my connectivity is in place, just with a couple of clicks. Here I have a layout where I have a couple of surface mount parts. They are electrically connected as shown by this red rat line. One thing that's slightly unique is that they are non-orthogonal. So this device is obviously not at 90 degrees or in any way orthogonal to this other device. If I want to connect these two devices using iNets, that's no problem at all if I were to start at this one and route out at 90 degrees. However, if I wanted to start with this side, or finish with this side for that matter, it might be difficult to do it perfectly orthogonal to the pad. However, we have now added in version 14 of AWR the ability to draw nets completely orthogonal to the pads. There's now what we call a gravity point that allows us to stick to that orthogonal path. So that way, once we've drawn this iNet, there will be no worries about there being any slivers or discontinuities, disconnected nets here between the pad and the net itself. Makes things a lot easier to draw, therefore making the iNet routing process much simpler. Thank you.